Here we are with John Mossman. We're talking about early on in careers and the IFP, which was, it had a romantic quality to it. I don't know what it was, but I always, felt like when going there, we were about to begin a great adventure or something.
Well, yeah, that was before, Indy was still, we were such outliers. Um, it was like we were living in the hinterlands and the IFP kind of like met us there and like gave us kind of a home. And for me, they started a program where I taught kids on the south side of Chicago how to be filmmakers. And
Really?
that before, the proliferation of phones that took video.
Mm-hmm.
So the interest in learning how to make a film and tell their story was one that that just doesn't exist anymore. Honestly, they
It
can
would
all
be
make a
neat to
TikTok, and
do
that's
the old, what's his name, who did, kept going back every 7 years, that British documentarian. It would be neat for you to go back and see some of those kids you were
oh, I
helping
see some.
out.
They stay in touch. In fact, I do I do a lot of letters of rec for kids that I knew
That
for
would
the
make a nice film, I think.
yeah
You know,
18 years. I did for 18 years, and I tried to make it to 20. I figured then there'd
20
be
years
time.
later.
But I made it to 18. I did 18 years consecutively, but then COVID hit, and then there was no way to do it in person. And then the films, what was a 6 week really intensive, 6 to 8 week, started as eight, and then went down to 6 week intensive summer camp where they wrote their own story and they directed and produced and edited, did the whole thing. Um, that I think those some of those 18 films, two of them won national Emmys, like
Wow.
national in the high school category, which was the consecutive, and that was, I guess, a singular event. So some of these kids never been out of Chicago, even on a plane.
Hmm.
Um, and so that for me, that was like one of the high points. But that got me started because um, it allowed me to spend more time actually sitting with the camera and sitting with other people talking about stories and how to make this better and working with some really great Chicago actors. They came in, people from Steppenwolf came in to act with these kids that are from the far south side, and then they'd also have local people from the neighborhood, and the acting was phenomenal. And so yeah,
I
that was
see a
that,
film there. I really do. I mean, go back and see where these kids went.
yeah. We have video. We always made a doc, so that's actually interesting.
I'd be one of the co-producers on that. See if we get
We
that
have
done.
we have docs from every single one. I've got to compile all of those.
That sounds like a beautiful piece, and you've got the demographics to get a little heart for people to see it.
That's a hell of an idea. I know what I'm going to do after we sign off here. I'm going to check out the docs that they made. We had Alexa, please stop.
Yeah, well, we had a sound problem. It was why I was testing why Zoom was such a mess with my friend Robin gives me all kinds of extra videos because he does the stuff with George Whipple. I don't know if he's famous enough to you, but he does all the celebrity interviews and the red carpet for many years. They actually made a film about Whipple, and it's coming out. And he's kind of locked in. I think he's like got a definite connection that Tribeca will take him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, I don't like to cover films I don't like. Um, where the gray area is where something almost worked, and it's worth then talking about how it would have worked. I'm willing to go that far, no further, because who wants to hear crappy reviews? Some of these people, they never even been on a film set, really, and they say such terrible things about films that are much better than I mean, it's really a
I was
disgrace.
thinking about I was thinking about a review. I don't know, like, because I'm in the process. I'm thinking about casting right now because I just got booked on another feature,
Hmm.
and I got to cast that thing in the next month or two. Thinking
Hmm.
about who to work with. And when I made the film Good Guy with a Gun, which premiered, it's a feature that premiered at excuse me, Dances with Films a couple years ago. I, a review came out where the reviewer said, the only reason to see this, it's like the directing is nothing, but the cinematography and the casting by, and they named the casting director. And it's like he had no idea that directors decide on the casting or often call in the actors for the casting. The casting director was fantastic, but it was a funny observation. Like the reason to see is for the work of this casting director.
That's
Yeah.
kind of
I
odd.
mean, I was
That's an
pleased
odd
that he loved the
expression.
cast. I
No,
mean, yeah, the
let's say
movie
the
was shit.
cast, and
The movie was shit except for all the actors who were
yeah.
great. Yeah,
I don't know. I could tell
pretty
you have
happy with
a
that.
gift for dialogue, which is, I think, the key to making narratives. That seems to be to me, that's like a sticking point in indie film is people, they're totally visual, but I don't know. Movies are about dialogue. That's what, you
Yeah,
know.
and yet you can't. I don't want to make a movie with like I made a recent movie and said to somebody, after seeing a whole bunch of others that were sort of the same of the same category, I said, we don't have is a bunch of people sitting on a sofa, sofas talking, and that's fine. But that's at a certain point, I'm trying to avoid having all my characters sitting on a sofa
I
talking
like that.
for a quarter of the movie at least. Trying to avoid it.
Yeah, yeah, no, but it's the dialogue wherever it is that
Yeah.
I think is at that. I don't think, yeah, I guess it's a certain kind of gift that could come from all kinds of ways of you're working with art, but they teach film so visually that you lose that snappy part. It's like it just keeps it rolling. That's where I think is the weak point in indie
We
film.
point a
Like,
lot of indie. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I think I mean, a lot of it is it's a derivative. Sometimes people are make the mistake of trying to make someone else's dialogue.
no, no, no,
No,
no. Got to
no.
be organic. Got to
Yeah,
be organic and one line on top of another. You can't just say, I'm going to get a line like this and then I'll put that in no matter what. No.
yeah. When I started out, it was a little tough because for me, realized I was making everybody in the same voice.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I mean, everyone was like my voice and whatever the hell that I didn't even know what that was. But so,
That's
but
why I thought your co partner there on this film that you had with Dances, um, she looked like she would balance you very well.
yeah, she tells me what to say all the time.
I mean, you were finishing each other's sentences, which is good.
Uh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, we have actually a very similar sense of humor. It really helps us with our with our writing and the joke telling. Whether it's a serious like how to get a good laugh even in a really serious moment. We have a very similar sense of humor.
So, like I said, don't forget this. We really should follow up. That is the kind of film. And you probably should look at the guy in Britain and look at all those films because he went back every 7 years, right?
Yeah, yeah. That's yeah. You really got me thinking about something about
I'd
that.
love to be
People are
some kind of
interested in that
co-producer on that because
because
I'm good on
what
the
you could
phone.
yeah, what you could do with that is you could show clips of the individual movies from each year, which is interesting because this is the story they chose to tell.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's about gun violence, sometimes it's just like the most ridiculous Looney Tunes broad comedy and truly funny and well executed. Um, but this is what they were thinking about, and this is what they decided to write in 2004, 2008.
So
This is
where
what
are
was
they
going
now?
on in
That is,
2012.
that's it.
Yeah,
You
and then
know,
you can check out the doc footage from those kids, those very kids, and yeah, then to find out where they are. A couple are doing really well.
people
Uh,
love investigation stuff, like what you
yeah,
had to go through to find somebody. Like
yeah,
my first short that I made, it wasn't supposed to be with work in progress, but it held up for 20 minutes. And it was about a tenor saxophone player. And I wanted to follow up. I don't know, 30 years later. Where the heck is he? I can't find him.
yeah. I still am in contact with their teachers, who the two teachers at the two different schools on the south side that I worked at, and they actually would probably keep in. They're the kind of people that would keep in touch with their ex students, and
The
could tell me where.
creator economy that some of them must be still going in it, and some
Yeah,
must have made some very interesting choices to leave media, and that's worthwhile looking at too.
Yes, it is. A couple like went into music. A lot of them went into education. Did really well in education. One when he graduated, I don't know how he did this, man. He was an orphan. He went to high school, graduated high school, and did really well. And he directed this one episode. He was sharp, but kind of unsure of himself. And then a year or two later, he graduates high school, and he has a letter of congratulations from Barack Obama, who was from the
Ah,
neighborhood originally.
oh, that's cool.
And yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah.
He's a teacher now. And I did another one for someone who wants to teach just recently. And one was in a story about kids getting into trouble and, um, you know, involved in crime. And one of those kids ended up in the can, which is tragic. But another one went into music producing. Yeah, you got me wondering now what stories are out there. One's a model.
I
They
have
do all
one
this stuff.
world-class documentarian I work with who is the kind of guy who could, be a collaborator that would just take it over the top, to fill in some of the, Mark Levin, who did a Slam and won Sundance a
Hmm.
long time ago. And I just covering him on everything because he's just such a pure filmmaker, and his whole family is. His father was made a film called Trump, What's the Deal? And his son is a documentarian. He's just like so pure and clean, and the last film he made one about about a basic income that was out recently, and yeah, he's a guy and he's got his post production going with Blowback Productions. Sometimes it's better to share the responsibility, but I bet he would like this particular piece too.
You have to pass on that information, yeah, because this might be. I've done docs, but this might be a little beyond the scope of. Might be good to have outside eyes on this.
Yeah, I mean, the team would be incredible. And you just put me on the phone and I'll get whatever we need for money because we'd have the credibility, you know?
Yeah, I'm getting. I've got to start archiving all of these. This is hysterical, but all my uh, HD cam tapes, those little cassettes from like 2000. That's what the kids shot on at
Right.
their
Well,
school,
they made
and
the,
that was good quality at the time. And and so they had all these tapes, and I don't have a way to. I've got the deck, but computers won't recognize them anymore. It's really a problem, and you have to go someplace to get it converted. It's like a $50 a tape, and I've got like 300 of them. So got to
well,
figure that problem out because then we have access to all that documentary footage that
you're
these.
in LA. We could talk. I think you should talk to Pro 8 millimeter. Those guys really know all the formats from back and forth. You know that company?
No, I don't. And what I'd really like to find is someone who takes pity on us as a former not for profit, and we need to figure out how to crack this code of getting computers to recognize a deck.
They could do it. I guarantee Pro 8 could do it if anybody
Yeah,
could.
they can do it, but most of them charge you $50 a tape, and that
Well,
becomes
yeah.
many, many thousands of dollars when you got hundreds of tapes.
Well, we get a decent price and we just go raise the money, man, because it's a
Okay.
story that I think people would love to see.
I'm down, Scott.
It's a heart tugger,
Yeah,
you know?
it is. Because then you got to get the footage of them today.
Yeah, exactly. That's the other side of it.
Some of
There
them,
you go.
some of them hated my guts. That would be hysterical.
Yeah, you get a
Because
short piece from them of refusing to be in the film
yeah,
afterward.
they'd probably love it. They'd probably love it. They were pretty good natured, but I was tough, man. Sometimes it was well, making films is tough,
Yeah.
and they got paid. They
Look,
got paid. They got paid minimum wage to be filmmakers, and so we were always telling them. Their teacher and I would be telling, man, you could be working at McDonald's, and some are like, I'd rather work at McDonald's.
that's funny.
A couple times, a couple decided to go work at McDonald's rather than get paid to make films because it's a lot easier work than making films.
Yeah, and the competition now. So you need an edge, a real edge. Besides the edge of your film, you need an edge of the angle that you could get someone to throw money in that. That's the hard part. That comes from, I think.
So what you do? You do film and theater, huh?
I'm moving into theater because I bought, every single name that had indie and reporter in it that was related. I own Indie Food
Yeah.
Reporter. At first, I wasn't sure what indie food was until I went up to Lincoln Center with their new, complex they built, and they had a cafe there, and they called it the Indie Food Cafe. So, well, there's the answer. That's indie food, and I own Indie Fashion Reporter, which I should be, but I'm a little too disorganized because Indie Fashion Week right now, I could have gone to two parties. I just skipped it next year. But I think that would probably make more money than any of them, because the only competition in terms of publications is WWD. Um, but also in theater, it's the same thing. Penske, which is doing a good job. I can't say they don't. They own Hollywood Reporter, they own Variety, they own IndieWire, they own Deadline, they own Backstage, they
Mhm.
own Billboard. Um, it's the headlines and the stories start to repeat. That's the only problem, you know.
Indie Fashion Week, you'd have to bust out your mink stole.
Yeah, I don't know what I do. I've been behind the scenes, behind the camera for so long, I got a nice t-shirt on promoting the great John Trudell, but my clothes is like, I got to upgrade the whole life to the next level. But I'm looking forward to it, because there's basically about 100 off-Broadway theaters in my region in New York, and
And so does that mean you'll probably get comps to these then? As
I have to get comps.
Yeah.
It goes with, so I'm trying to find out who the press people are in theater because everybody's bought Indie Film Reporter off a list. So I know who they are, you
Well,
know.
we'll get your bona fides up as high as possible, and that would, man, you shows are really expensive there, man.
Yeah,
They're
yeah, yeah.
expensive here. I thought they were expensive in Chicago. Getting expensive, it's nothing.
Well, they
I can
want
go
to make
see a show
money.
here for $70, $60 at the top theaters, and that's.
Well, everything in theater now at the Broadway level is high union and, they need to make a living too.
Do you want to talk about theater or?
Well, I went the theater and your relation, how it came to you to integrate your theater background into indie film because
Oh,
the actors carry a narrative film. Without good actors, you've got nothing.
yeah, yeah, I agree. So that actually affects that. I think that's why any of my films they are successful. That's why they're successful. I pick good actors and I try to make them help them do their best work. And in some cases, a lot of cases, I feel like that succeeds. And they, I've I don't adhere to the sort of thought that someone's too theatrical. There's a lot. If they're a good actor on stage, and I work in a small, I started like our theater, Equity Theater, Artistic Home,
Oh,
started as 28 seat. The Artistic Home started as a 28-seat theater, Equity. We
mm,
were like tier N, lowest tier. We tried to stay there for a long time because that allowed several of us in the company to work or bring in somebody from outside the community who was just a killer actor but
mhm,
wanted a great role. Like they might be
yeah,
just jobbing out working as like a supporting role at Chicago Shakespeare, supporting role at Goodman, and they're working and they're getting paid $1,000 a week, but they're going to come and work at Artistic Home for $128 a week and get a lead and get
yeah.
like
It's important. Yeah,
it was, yeah, they needed to feed their soul. And so that was kind of how we did it for a long time. But so when you're in a 28 or 38 seat theater, which is a lot of what our sort of range has been, it's all pretty close up. Like you're as close to an audience as you can get. You're just a couple feet away often.
yeah,
And and so they can see bullshit, and you have a different, actors are good at adapting to the subtleties of the venue that they're in. If you're on the Goodman's main stage, you're going to perform one way, and if you're on our stage, you're going to adjust. And so I think it's was pretty intuitive once I got people understanding, like they got comfortable what film was about. I fucking love. I love working with actors who have film chops. I mean, theater chops, and understand where to find conflict and stakes and urgency, and they just inherently find that they understand where the joke is. They've
well, they
tested
got the
everything
good
and done it.
face. They still got to do that. They got to pass that. you
Yeah,
know,
they got to have a good face, right? Yeah, they got to have a
that
face
is,
that's alive, and they have to
he
have a
gets
point of view.
way,
And
yeah,
not all do, but they tend to most tend to good actors know that like they have to have a point of view on film because we want to cut away to somebody while someone else is talking.
yeah.
So there's little things, they talk too loud. It's like no, like you just got to talk as loud as we're talking right now,
Yeah.
and they make that
And
adjustment quickly.
people don't
So
like it.
yeah. So those are the little things that, I think there's a real hunger in the theater community to have a little more control over your art. And so there's a lot of theater people that are starting to make films. So I was one of them. I went to school for film and theater, and they'd tell you then you got to make a decision. They would literally just tell you that.
Mm.
I mean, you remember there was no crossover, sort of like it was in film. You're on a film set, and people are like, you're an actor. They like look at you askance, like you had some disease, and so you had to keep that. Actually, had to keep it quiet on sets when I was, a boom op or whatever else, because they
That's a
just,
hard job being a boom operator.
I loved it though.
Holding that thing that long,
Yeah,
you got good shoulders.
yeah. You need. I have
That is
long arms,
hard.
very long arms. You got to learn how to. Just got to relax. You got to have your arms straight up in the air and be completely relaxed.
Yeah, because how else
But I
can you
loved it. I think I love that job actually. It allowed me to
really?
stand next to talent and next to directors and watch them work for years. And you get to see,
Yeah,
how
exactly.
things work and how
That's
actors
what
work.
John Wayne did. I read about the last biography of John Wayne, and it gave me a different perspective on him because everybody wants to go political about his rightism, but he wasn't really like a fascist type. He just happened to be associated with people in that end. But he came up as a guy who worked on sets for years, and John
Oh
Ford
yeah, 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 yeah. He was.
John Ford finally put him in, and he got it.
He was like USC lineman, and he just put him in, and he was on sets,
Yeah.
and yeah, I forgot about that. So
Good.
yeah, that
That's a
that's how I
great book,
did
the
it.
one about John Wayne. It was
Yeah.
2014. I still read books because I actually sell used books. They're worth a lot more than you might think,
What are
hardback.
you What are you reading right now?
The last book, and I'm just about to finish it, is just an amazing book that I ran into. Also, a science fiction book by the fellow who wrote. They were trying to make it into a movie. There's actually a whole thing called Snow Crash. Never heard about that one? It was like the writer who wrote that. It's this gigantic book, 860 pages.
What's it about?
It's about uh, it's space in that, but he's dealing with like no crazy aliens. It's the interpersonal things between a satellite here, a main hub, and how they dock and hit in, and then the people involved and how
Mm.
you could die in a minute if you don't execute the right
Yeah.
move of docking. Your thing and so it's what do you call hard science fiction that they
Okay.
have that
Yeah.
niche there.
I'm reading two different ones right now, or just finished up one not too long ago that's kind of sticks with me. And I read it partly because of Nobody Fucking Leaves, because there was stuff in it that I was writing, and then someone told me, you know, whatever, I can't remember his first name, but his last name is Elizondo, I think. He's a CIA guy. It was about remote viewing. It was called Imminent,
Mm.
and it was about his experience both in the CIA, both tangentially talked a bit about his early days where he learned about remote viewing and his experiences, which was essentially where
What do you mean
trained.
by remote viewing? Like, am I viewing you right now?
Kind of, if we didn't have Zoom and yet we were still having this conversation on some sort of basic level, that would be remote viewing, where someone could be in a room, let's say somewhere in the world, and they could serve as a beacon, as a sender to a receiver, another person who was trained and was a receiver, and they could receive information about that room. And in some cases, it was so uncannily accurate that people thought that they were scamming, that it wasn't, that they were cheating, and they weren't. And
How's
then
it
you work.
accomplished?
Then the rest of the book is essentially about the UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon. UFOs and his experience in exploring those. And so the book is called Imminent. It's about it's only a matter of time before we discover exactly who this is that all the Air Force pilots and everybody is seeing, and that the government tends to cover up really carefully, but
Yeah.
becoming less so interested in. They're revealing a lot more, releasing
Yeah, they
stuff.
have broken some stories here and there.
Yeah. So anyway, about that, and then I'm reading a little. I'm returning to Kurt Vonnegut's short collection,
Oh,
The Monkey House.
see, now there's a man who understood dialogue too.
Oh boy, did he! And he, the thing about Kurt Vonnegut, had very few villains. Everyone was just a little foolish. It's just a degree of the danger of their foolishness.
Yeah, he was a humanist. I understand
Yeah, he sure was.
the labels of people, even the ones who really are good and competent.
Yeah, I think that's
He
a
found that.
he influenced my writing a lot, and
Oh yeah,
I
can't
try to
go wrong
humanize.
with Kurt Vonnegut.
Yeah, try to humanize almost everybody, but you still need a villain. It's just that they've followed their worst impulses, and this is what happens.
Well, there was a film I think at Dances with Films. I think Justin, the PR guy had it. It was called "I Know Exactly How You'll Die." Uh,
Oh yeah,
did you
yeah.
hear
What
about
was
that
that
one
one?
there?
Yeah, what was that one about?
It was a kind of a little bit of a horror, violent thing. There was a stalker,
Hmm.
and she was trying to avoid him at this motel, which is good mise en scene. And
Hmm.
he finally does show up, and the
I
villain,
was
the casting was so bad it ruined the film because the villain just didn't catch it. You can't make a film with a villain if they're not a good villain. It's just that kills it to me.
Yeah, they have to be a worthy villain, a worthy
And this
opponent.
guy just nothing. And other than that, the film it was very creative and lots of, good things to it. They just made a little casting mistake. That's the thing that really kills the few films, like maybe personally, I always like the one what was it called? It'll come to me where they everything was great until the ending. And whenever they have a really intense film that goes through all kinds, and they always solve it by true love will solve it for you. And, that's hard to pull off in the first place.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I'm
Uh,
writing a film right now where there's a line in there that says endings are hard.
well, they killed it to me because of the music. That's one of the three things
Hmm.
that when they come to that love, it solves everything. It was a futuristic one. It was a very famous director. And, you know, the music just Mm, mm, it was like the strings. It's too
Yeah.
late in the history of film to tug the heart with strings when you have a love, just
When I was younger, I remember seeing the first movie. It was a seminal experience for me. I was watching Color Purple in the
oh,
theater,
I remember that.
and then the strings came in, the music came in, and I was just like, I jumped the shark right there. I was like, okay, I'm done. And it's such an interesting thing because it happens in different places for everyone. For most people, where are you gonna? What's too much with that music? Where you're just like, I'm done, and then I was done with the movie because I couldn't take the manipulation and the overblown scoring that I found like wildly unnecessary. And I was enjoying the film. I could have enjoyed that film, but
Yeah, once you know something about, trying to get to the top end and you get an element of a film
yeah,
that's just is totally off, it kills it. And
it's
the
hard.
music is
Making
one
films
of
is hard, man. It's there's so many little traps that you can make. It's such a it's just such a an obstacle course filled with mines. It's like a minefield of
yeah,
ways
it's
for you
what's
to
so
screw
cool
up.
about it in a way. It's compressed war without bodies generally.
My last producer before there were a couple producers before Kevin Cooper is awesome. He's like, how I look going into production? It's like going into battle. And I've been in battle. He was a vet.
Yeah,
He'd been shot at. He thought it was similar to going into war. And he'd been in war.
yeah.
And I love that analogy. It kind of kills me because you got to go into it willingly and with an open heart, knowing that what you're about to do could end up terribly.
Yeah, David, a guy who I really had hated died 2 years ago. I love this man. He was Abel Ferrara's DP, Ken Kelch. And he was a Navy SEAL and a real hero. And he came back and went to NYU and Abel needed a DP for his first film, and he worked with him on about 8 or 10 of his films. He was such a beautiful guy, but he understood that he had used film to kind of get over what he saw. He was a SEAL. You
Mm. There's a cathartic, quality to making films as a filmmaker. For me, it's like a lot of times you work things out. I think people are like, why do you make this film? Why are you telling this story? Sometimes it's you're just curious about it and you don't have any direct experience with it. And like Chloe Zhao, she makes stuff that she's making stuff about a rodeo rider who broke his neck in the
Mhm.
American West, and she makes a beautiful movie. And that, but she connects to it, she says, because she feels echoes of Mongolia, which is in her genes. And
Hmm.
so she loves the American West, but she knows nothing about that stuff, but she's sensitive and she's curious about it. And she does this over and over. She makes such beautiful films. And then you got people that are just like, I'm working my shit out. And sometimes that's me with like Good Guy with a Gun. You're just working out your anger or your frustration. You're trying to understand why, unpack why society is like this and who these people are. And you create a scenario that's sort of like, okay, this is what I'm trying to communicate that could happen with the path that we're going down, right? So yeah, it's really interesting that when you look at why people shoot what they shoot on films. But
But you're
um,
still writing to break, waiting to break through truly, to where Hollywood will call you when they have a film that fits your oeuvre, so to
I
speak.
I am waiting for that. Yeah, I
Well,
got
listen,
got
I
a
interviewed the Safdie brothers when they were just
yeah,
early Safdie brothers on Lenny Cook, the film
yeah.
they made about the basketball.
I
And
did have that happen to me this week though, but not by Hollywood. It was just Chicago indie production. They called me and asked me, they have the funding, and something happened with the other producer directors that they had, and I got a call and I said, "Do you
I
want
got
to?"
a feeling about you. I got a feeling that you're gonna go there. I mean, I interviewed people. I did the first article ever on IndieWire. Okay,
No, yet.
yeah,
Congrats.
it shows my age, I
Yeah,
guess. But it was Reed
yeah.
Hastings from, I think it was Reed from Netflix, when they were just like putting out DVDs, came down on a Saturday morning, met me in a park in New York, and made a nice interview. I mean, these are people, I'm waiting for my point now too, because
That was the
seeing
first one.
people go from like just I'm in the business kind of to like I am the business, so to speak.
Yeah. So you had the first one for IndieWire.
Yeah.
That was yeah. What'd you do? Ride your trike? You must have been six.
There you go. Oh, it was the Mark Rabinowitz used to wear the hat. They called him
Yeah.
the rabbi, and Eugene Hernandez, who like nobody was as prolific as a writer in film as Eugene. He just kicked them out one after the other. Very just nice guy, but he
Mhm.
really that's why he's ahead of Sundance. And Lincoln Center wasn't indie enough for him. He had to go to Sundance. You know. I want to see what he does in Boulder because now he's got 3 years under his belt, and
Mhm.
they're going to make some kind of special headlines because he's got the, you know, overall strategic grasp and he's calm, straightforward person. They're going to love him in Boulder, I think. Let's hope anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Park
So
City
what?
is a great mise en scene, personally, for film. Do you want to go on a little bit more and do
Yeah.
another one?
What would you talk about? Would you like me to discuss here? I mean, what?
Oh, we'll find it. We've got several seeds, and I'm going to talk about the films you made that are still out. Because I have a theory that the evergreen thing is the most important thing to indie film. That you're going into a great catalog, and we have to make it easier for people to uh, get into the content that's there. You
Okay.
know, but
Yeah. What's the so in? What do you mean by evergreen?
meaning that. you can watch it 20 years from now and be able to make the mental changes that, oh, phones don't look like that anymore, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but it's still, yeah. Oh, I like to think that it's that mine age pretty well. My first film that I started off with that was any good was like the second short film I made when I moved to LA as young, and I was auditioning for other people's films and short films and things like that. And I was working in TV, but I wanted, I just want to
We're
get real.
going out soon, so
Oh,
we will. This is a conclusion of part one with John Mossman, future uh, Spielberg.
that's good.